Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 1984 adventure classic Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Now, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom is one of those films that I have honestly had an up and down relationship with over the years. When I was younger, I watched this countless times on VHS and I loved it. I really enjoyed the film just from the very first time that I saw it when I was a kid, and it was on constant rotation in my VCR player when I was younger, and when it came out in DVD, along with the other three Indiana Jones films at the time. But as I got older, I started to kind of fall out of favor with the film a little bit due to the film's plot, due to the inconsistencies when it comes to the tone of the movie, Willie, and a few other things. And it wound up being a film that I watched a lot less over Raiders and The Last Crusade. But I saw the film in the theater in 35 millimeter. I think it was like 2 or 3 years ago, along with the other two films in the original Indiana Jones trilogy, and I wound up falling in love with it all over again because of the fact that it is easily one of the most thrilling films you will ever see. It is the epitome of a motion picture thrill ride. It goes by at a breakneck pace, like a runaway minecart, and it's just immensely entertaining and enjoyable to watch. Now, the film is directed by Steven Spielberg, who returns to the director's chair for this next installment in the series, and his direction in this is, in my opinion, every bit as good as what he brought to the table with Raiders, and at times even better, especially when it comes to the extensive amount of practical effects and stunt sequences that are utilized throughout this film. This is a movie that just crams even more crazy set pieces, even more crazy stunts, even more locations in terms of the setting, and as a result, it just is a absolutely wonderful film to look at from a visual standpoint. Spielberg has once again just brought to the screen his signature style, his signature flair, but with a little bit of a horror, darker edge to it, which is refreshing. And it's one of those films where it really does shine from a visual perspective. The sequences at Pancop Palace are just gorgeous and great to look at. Even the stuff leading up to that at Club Obi-Wan with the opening sequence that takes place with Kate Capshaw's Willie Scott doing the musical number, Anything Goes. It looks like something that's just glitzy and glamorous and something straight out of a big budget Hollywood musical from that time period. And the stuff with the raft sequence where the raft falls out of the sky and then lands on the mountain and then lands in the river. Even the way that the village is shot, I think, is also pretty good. And I just love the transition from like Pancop Palace, which is this luxurious, just beautiful looking, picturesque setting, to the nightmarish, hellish landscape of the underground thuggy lair. And it's just a really marvelous, just magnificent looking film. And when it comes to like the action sequences, they're just shot in just amazing quality. The action is just so exciting and pulse pounding and thrilling. You feel every punch, you feel every explosion, feel every whip crack. It's exhilarating. It really is. And in large part, it's due to the way that Spielberg shot those scenes. This film honestly has my favorite shot of Indiana Jones in any of the Indiana Jones films. When Indy shows up in the mine, and after he was taken out of the black sleep by Short Round, and he shows up, and Spielberg just shoots him in such a way that it's just the epitome of badass and cool. I love that shot. And then he, stops the thuggy cult members there, and brings out the whip, and it's just a really great moment. And Spielberg just got the most out of that scene. And what makes Spielberg's just impressive level of direction all the more impressive is the fact that he was dealing with so many distractions. Yet again, he was dealing with a set that was very torturous and problematic because of the fact that the shoot was difficult and just very tedious and just tasking. I mean, very taxing on Spielberg and the rest of the crew and the cast. People once again got sick. Harrison himself wound up getting a back injury that was so bad that he had to go into surgery, and they had to stop shooting because it was severe enough. And if that isn't bad enough on its own, Spielberg was also going through a very rough breakup in his personal life. So these are all things that combined together could break somebody, could break another director, or could show up on the screen. But that never happened with Temple of Doom. It still looked consistent. It still looked and had this appearance of just high quality, and it didn't really feel like Spielberg didn't have his heart in it. I know he said in interviews like years later that his heart wasn't as much into the film because he was thinking about other things and he was too absorbed by his personal life. But I don't really feel that way at all. I think his direction in this is just as dynamic and just as strong as his direction in Raiders or any of his other classic films at the time. This is still prime Spielberg at his best. And honestly, I would even say his direction in this is better than The Last Crusade, and definitely a higher level of consistency than Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. So, yeah, I love the way that Spielberg directed this. I mean, the minecart scene in particular is just one of my favorite sequences that he's ever done in anything. Now, the screenplay by Willard Hayek and Gloria Katz is one of those scripts that really has some significant highs. I mean, the moments in the screenplay that are top flight, just really great stuff, are on par with the best that Spielberg has to offer when it comes to the film's direction or other aspects of the film. But it has lows that are not up to par to the best that this film is able to showcase. So what you have here is a script that is mostly good, if not great, but there are a couple moments where it runs into some pitfalls or some booby traps that trip it up or get it trapped. And one thing about this script that I do really like, though, is how unique and how genuinely risky it is. This is a very ambitious script, and as a result, it kind of oversteps its bounds a couple times, and that does affect the overall quality of the screenplay. But I appreciate it. I love the fact that these two writers, they go for broke here. They not only decide to go an unconventional route by making this a prequel, which is just unheard of at the time, to make a prequel to a already established successful film as the second entry in your franchise, that is quite a leap of faith. And it paid off because the movie was a huge hit, but it definitely is something that is very risky. But I like it because it provides a unique take on Indiana Jones, because you see a younger Indy who's a little bit brasher, he's a little bit more impulsive, he's a little bit more selfish. You see an Indiana Jones who is more focused on fortune and glory, and honestly kind of losing track and sight of the reason why he got into archaeology, the reason why he's doing what he's doing, because of the fact that he wants to preserve history. And here he's kind of doing it more for his own selfish needs. And that creates a very different take on Indiana Jones. And I think it creates a very interesting take on the character. It shows that Indiana Jones is a character that has more depth to him than you might have initially realized. Because throughout the film, he learns and he grows and he changes and he becomes closer to the Indiana Jones that people know and love in Raiders. And I like that. I think that's a nice perspective, and it's a good element to this script. I think when it comes to the action, when it comes to the spectacle, this screenplay is almost second to none, because not only do you have the whole sequence at Obi-Wan that at the Obi-Wan club that opens the film with the rolling gong and all of that, you also have the raft sequence with just the sheer audacity of that, the raft falling out of the sky and then landing on the mountain and then going down the mountain and then going into the rapids. And then you have the stuff at Pankot Palace. You got the fun back and forth between Willie and Indiana Jones when it comes to them waiting for the other to go to the bedroom, and they're waiting for the next person to make their move, and then that leads to them finding the entrance to the underground layer of the Thuggy cult, and you see the whole sacrifice sequence with the heart being ripped out of some guy's poor chest and people getting lowered into lava pits. And it's just pure insanity. You have the whole black sleep where if you're essentially forced to drink blood out of a severed head, you lose yourself and you become, in a lot of ways, kind of possessed by this evil spirit, or just this just evil nature, and you're no longer yourself, and you're just easily manipulated and become a slave to evil. That's some dark stuff. And then you have the whole bits with the kids who were stolen from their homes and being used for child labor to try to find this other stone. And it definitely does feel like the stakes aren't necessarily quite as high here as in Raiders, but they're still high enough, because if Molaram and the Thuggy get the other Sankara stone, that'll give them power that's almost potentially equal to what the Nazis could have obtained if they found a way to secure the power of the Ark. And I just love just how dark and twisted and just ballsy this script is. It really is not afraid to go to some very dark places. And it still provides a lot of the same stuff that you want out of an Indiana Jones film. The whole appeal of the booby traps, with the whole sequence in that room with the spikes on the ceiling, and just, you thought the spiders or the snakes in Raiders were scary. Here we're gonna give you just just an absolute, just insane number of insects. Just the floor is just literally crawling with insects, and all different types, cockroaches and stick bugs and spiders and just everything. And we'll also throw in some big crocs too, who have developed a distinct taste for human flesh. But yeah, just those elements are there. You definitely have a lot of the adventure stuff. The action is just absolutely top tier stuff. Because not only do you have the whole action sequences that kind of open the film, but you also have the stuff in the middle with Indiana Jones fighting the Thuggy cult and fighting the big hulking Thuggy member on the conveyor belt. Then you have the minecart chase. And then even after that, you got a massive flood of just water that's just streaming through the set and explodes out a wall. And then you think like, okay, all right, there's no way that this film is going to get any crazier after the minecart chase. But that's not the case, because then you have the bridge sequence where Steven Spielberg and company wired explosives to a wooden bridge and blew it in half. And then you have all these characters hanging on top, these actors and hanging on onto the bridge over this cliff. And it's just pure madness. It's madness. Like even the whole stuff with the whole bridge sequence is insanity. Like just just tying yourself up to the bridge and holding on for dear life as Indiana Jones cuts the bridge and, says, Molaram, prepare to meet Kali in hell. It just cuts the rope in half. It sends all these thuggy cult members flying to their death. It's just a very satisfying climax. And the Sankara stones, they're returned to their rightful owners. The children are returned to their families. Molaram and the Thuggy cult are disposed of. And Indiana Jones gets the girl. And the movie is over. And it's just one of those films that is just very fun from a script and story perspective. And there's just so many aspects of this script that are great. There are aspects of it, though, that are not really the best. Or, like I was saying earlier, they are suffer from pitfalls. And a lot of that has to do like with the comedy. Some of the comedy in this script is funny, like a lot of the stuff with Short Round and Indiana Jones and the whole back and forth with those two characters. I don't mind some of the stuff with Willie and Indiana Jones. In fact, I've kind of grown to not necessarily hate Willie as much as I once did at one point. She is irritating at times because she just won't stop screaming, but she does have her merits. I think the way that the writers wrote her is actually a lot better than people give it credit for, because she starts out as this very self-centered, cloying, annoying character, and this "oh no, I broke a nail" kind of character. But as the film goes on and she has more experiences and she deals with more crazy scenarios, she starts to evolve as a character. And by the end of the movie, she's able to hold her own. She takes out cult members. She's able to move past the initial first impression of her character. Also, I feel that the way the writers wrote her actually enabled her to have some decent chemistry and romantic moments with Indiana. And I think that's definitely another underrated aspect of Willie Scott. But yeah, I mean, some of the stuff with Willie is a bit much, and I think the writers could have eased back a little bit on that. And the dinner scene is just it's daring, it's risky. It's definitely something that you don't see coming the first time around, and part of me does like the creativity behind it, but it's just too overdone. It's just too much. And that's just another instance of just the writers just really could have just not gone that far with it, because it gets to the point where it just feels like it's overkill. And yes, the way that the screenwriters interpret Indian culture is admittedly a little problematic looking back, but I think it's more of a fantasy adventure movie. So I think it's not necessarily trying to make any sort of genuine political statement. So it doesn't necessarily bother me as much as it might other people. But I can understand why some people who are from that culture would find the approach these writers have to be admittedly a little offensive. So I think that that's another aspect of the script that in retrospect could have been handled with a little more care. But that doesn't mean that the film is terrible to me, and I'm not going to outright say that the entire movie is racist and problematic just because of just kind of a let's just say less than faithful or necessarily true interpretation of that culture. Um, I think the writers didn't necessarily know what they were writing about, and they didn't really do the research. They just decided to pick the thuggy cult and make them the villains, and they kind of decided to just deal with the consequences later. And I also think that the way that things were written here is also a little bit of a microcosm of the time, where a lot of writers at this time, they didn't really think of those kind of things. They didn't think about whether or not their interpretation of another culture was going to be uh, uh, respectful, or it was going to be closer to reality, especially when it comes to the way that Kali is written. So all of that being said, despite my issues and some of the problems with the script, I do. I think it's a solid screenplay. I think it's actually a lot better than some of its biggest detractors make it out to be. But it definitely could have been a better script. Like I said, you could have avoided some of those pitfalls, um, and probably would have helped the film be even better. And that's saying a lot, because I think it's a great film. And one more thing I want to talk about when it comes to the script before I go any further is how it portrays Mola Ram. I really like it. I know a lot of people are not a big fan of Mola Ram because of the fact that he's not a very in-depth or fleshed out character, but I think the script makes up for it because of the intimidation factor. This character is downright terrifying, and he's just pure evil. And I think that's really what the screenwriters are going for here. They weren't going for sympathetic villain. They weren't going for, oh, here's a backstory with this guy. They're just like, no, this guy is somebody straight out of hell, and he wants to take over the world. He wants to spread this black sleep across the globe. He wants to essentially turn the entire world into hell on earth. And that works. That works for what we're trying to do here. This guy, he'll rip your heart out, and he'll drop your ass into lava. Like, I mean, it doesn't get more intense or more intimidating than that. I think Molaram, the way that he's written, is easily the most intimidating villain in the entire series. So, yeah, really good script. Not great, but still really good. And the cast, I think, is for the most part excellent. I think this is a really good cast. I mean, Harrison Ford, once again, just incredible as Indiana Jones. The charisma, the charm, the just badassery of this character. This is honestly where Indiana Jones was the coolest. Like he was rivaling James Bond. I almost said Indiana Jones again. He was rivaling himself. Well, in some ways he kind of was because he rivaled himself and Raiders, but he was rivaling or surpassing the cool factor of James Bond in this movie because he's just a total badass in this film. In terms of just all of the action sequences that he was involved in, the fights, the moments with the whip, the scenes where he uses his smarts and his intelligence, even the stuff after he's broken out of the black sleep, and he just immediately starts kicking ass. And Harrison deserves so much credit for this because it was such a difficult shoot for him because he got really badly hurt and continued the trend of just getting hurt shooting these Indiana Jones movies. I mean, the first film, he hurt his knee so much that, you know, he tore a ligament in it. In this one, he hurt his back so badly that they had to stop production and he had to get surgery on it. And despite all of that, he was in the best shape of his life. And he even points out this production as the most fun he's had shooting an Indiana Jones movie, which is crazy considering everything that he was dealing with. But that just shows just how much he had to work with here, how many great scenes and moments that he had with this character in this film to really just make this character of Indiana Jones into an even bigger icon. Kate Capshaw, she's good. She's good as Willie. She's definitely playing up the character and playing up the more annoying and aspects of the character. But she has her own charm. She has her own bits of screwball comedy that definitely do give me a chuckle. Some nice usage of physical pratfalls and physical comedy. I think she and Harrison actually had some decent chemistry, not to the same level as the chemistry between Harrison and Karen Allen, but still some good chemistry nonetheless. But honestly, I feel that Kate Capshaw and her performance in this is a poor woman's Goldie Hawn. That's really what she's trying to bring to the table here with the bubbly sort of personality and the whole sort of selfish, kind of self-centered take on a character with the whole I'm worried about my looks and money and all this other stuff. And Goldie was just so good at playing those kind of roles, but that also lending a bit of an every woman thing to it that made her very likable and very personable. And I think Goldie would have been spectacular in this film. I wish Goldie Hawn did this movie instead of Protocol, because she did Protocol the same year, and that really didn't do that great financially and critically, and is relatively forgotten about today. But if she did this film, I think her star could have gotten even brighter. And that's saying a lot considering it's Goldie Hawn. Because Goldie Hawn is she's just so beautiful and just effervescent. And she could have easily played this kind of role, but made even the more irritating, kind of annoying aspects of it funnier and more tolerable for a wider audience. And I do feel that she and Harrison would probably have played off each other very well. And seems like a missed opportunity to me that Goldie Hawn wasn't Willie, because it seemed like a role that was just perfect for her. But then you have, of course, Huy Quan as Short Round in his first ever acting role. For a kid who hadn't really acted in anything before this, this is a really good performance. You could tell that this kid had something. You could tell why Spielberg decided to pick him for this role. He's just a lot of fun. He's got his own magnetic personality on the screen. The moments between him and Harrison are just really just awesome and cool to see. And he did a little bit of martial arts, was involved in some of the action sequences. You know, Short Round managed to kick some ass too, which I thought was nice to see when it comes to a film where the kid, he's not annoying, he can hold his own, and he's just as memorable and as iconic of a character as any of the other members in the supporting cast. In fact, I would probably say Short Round is probably more beloved and remembered fondly by fans of these films than anyone else in the supporting cast in any of these films other than maybe Sala, because he left that much of a positive impression on people. Amrish Puri as Molaram, even though the role wasn't very meaty when it comes to character depth, man, did he really ignite the screen with a genuinely just horrifying intensity. Just a very just intense, scary performance. I was just very unsettled and just uneasy when it comes to like every scene that he was in, and almost hypnotic too, with the way that he really just handled this character. You know, with the way that he was like staring into the camera, almost like he was staring and burning holes through your soul. Uh, I can understand why not only myself but a lot of other kids at the time had nightmares because of what this actor brought to this role. Like I remember having nightmares about Molaram ripping my heart out and dropping me into a lava pit. Um, the rest of the cast is fine, and we got Roshan Seth who plays the Prime Minister, Phillip Stone who plays this captain of the British Indian Army named Blumbert. Roy Chow is Lao She. I really liked his take on that character. Over the top, but just a lot of fun to watch. Goodbye, Dr. Jones. And even someone like Dan Aykroyd, who had a little cameo as one of the members of the British military. And then Pat Roach, once again. Oh, actually, he's actually just a guy who shows up. He escorts the main cast from their car to the plane. I got him confused with a different character who was at the dinner party. But yeah, Pat Roach, he's back again. This time he plays the giant Sherpa who brawls with Indy on the conveyor belt. So he not only has one iconic, memorable battle with Indiana Jones in this series, he has another one in this movie. So yeah, good cast. And once again, Douglas Slocum. I think he's the one that did cinematography for the first film. If I'm wrong, yeah, he did the cinematography for the first film as well as Last Crusade. Just some spectacular work. I just love the way he shot a lot of the sequences, like even scenes of just like a whole just uh um sky that's just full of vampire bats. Uh, those aren't birds, honey. Those are bats. Giant vampire bats. Like even the way that that whole scene is shot, I just love the way that looks, and just love the way that the thuggy uh, cult layer is shot with all the lighting and the smoke and the fire, and just a really spectacular looking film from a cinematography standpoint. The shots just look so good, and they look just amazing restored in 4K. And of course, the editing once again just top notch, just terrific stuff by Michael Kahn. This is a film that has some just really super fast pacing. The action sequences are fast and furious, and the editing really does place itself well with those scenes. It's not out of place. It's not distracting. It just is a nice, a solid extra presence to those sequences that just make them even more exciting to watch. And even some of the other stuff that's just trying to um, provide a sense of awe are also edited in a way that really do emphasize that as well. And yeah, there's not a lot of anything in terms of edits that are too choppy or too out of place. Just some really uh, um, just excellent work. And I know I've used that word numerous times, but there's only so many superlatives you can use when it comes to saying that something is excellent. So you might as well just, go back to the original term because it fits. It definitely does fit when it comes to Michael Kahn's editing in this. And the music, John Williams, I think he outdid himself here. I think his score in this is the best out of any of the films in the Indiana Jones franchise. And that's saying a lot since Raiders has some really great music in it. That's where you first hear the iconic main theme. That's where you have the arc theme. That's where you have the Marion theme and a lot of that other stuff, or the truck chase music. But this, you have the main theme, but even it's souped up a little bit. Then you have the Pankot Palace stuff. Then you have the just thundering, thuggy score. You have the minecart music. You have the whole Fortune and Glory score. You have the triumphant score that plays when all the kids return to the village. Just an absolute tour de force of his score. I mean, tremendous work by John Williams. And the film, it's like 118 minutes and it goes by super fast, about as fast as your average trip down a mountain and into a rushing river. And the visual effects by ILM and all these other people involved, other than maybe a couple shots of the minecart being obviously a miniature with some little people, little dolls inside, I cannot sing enough praises for the work of the visual effects artists in this. What they were able to do here was just revolutionary and just way ahead of its time when it comes to the usage of blue screen and all that other sort of stuff, and the combination of miniatures and back plates and all of these other effect shots like map paintings, the sequence with the heart being ripped out of the chest, and even the people being lowered into lava. Like, all that stuff still holds up remarkably well to this day, even all these years later. And just so many different things are just so difficult in terms of just pulling it off, and they just all pulled it off brilliantly. And the stunt work is just absolutely stupendous. This film features some of the best stunt work out of the entire decade of the 80s. And I really do feel that way. It really does. But yeah, I really don't know what else to say about Temple of Doom except it's a blast. I love this movie. It's a great film. Does it have issues? Yes, but they don't really affect my overall enjoyment of it that much because its strengths are so strong that it ultimately outweighs its weaknesses. And if anything, it's honestly a little more underrated nowadays because it gets way too much hate, even from people in the Indiana Jones fan base. Um, but yeah, that's my thoughts on Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. And until next time, I'll see you later. See ya.